All right. Oh, are you there yet? Are you
I
ready?
have to make this one first. But it's unmuted, so
Okay. I want to make sure that we're recording and everything.
we are recording.
All right, perfect.
Now the video is on. So.
Perfect, thank you. All right, we will call the August 20th meeting of the Historic Preservation Review Commission to order. It is now 6:01. This is our regular meeting, and roll call, please.
Shannon Blazer. Patty Tyler.
Here.
Vice Chair Michael Davenport.
Here.
Chair Lisa Manfold.
Here. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of May 21st, 2024. You were?
I make a motion.
All right, all in favor? Raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Do we have any public comments?
Nobody signed up.
Okay. And does anyone today feel that with our new business, or that we have a conflict of interest?
No.
Hearing none, we will move on to the new business certificate of appropriateness for 225 15th Avenue exterior work. And Dylan, if you want to go ahead and get us started.
Sure, yeah, so I'll start with a brief presentation from the staff side, then we have the applicants here and the owner. Paul, correct?
I'm Paul.
Yes, I'm sorry, so they are performing the work on the building in question. It's for 225 15th Avenue, formerly former wood shop woodworking sign is still on the front window. And the request is for a few items on the exterior of the building, specifically placement of existing exterior entry doors on the front and side of the building, replacement of existing storefront glazing for the windows, but maintenance of the same window frames and whatnot. This is part of an overall project that has some interior work as well, which I believe the applicants will go into, but I'll just stick to the exterior work and then let them answer any questions about the vision and all of that. So obviously the building's within our historic district. It's also from period of significance, so it is a contributing structure to our historic district. The criteria for approval speak to a number of items. I'll just briefly go through them. It's again just with respect to the doors, the window glazing, the placement. So first is consistency with and promotion of the purposes of the guidelines. Staff believes it is consistent with the proposed work is consistent with the purposes of the guidelines. It is exterior work. It's relatively minor exterior work, but obviously windows and doors are a substantial part of historic preservation and the historic character of our district and its buildings. The work, as I said, window glazing. At this, looking at the doors, which were included in the packet, they're definitely in need of repairs and replacement, as the applicants have suggested. Even if we were to repair the doors, there would still be issues with their functionality, security, and things like that going forward. But the doors that are being proposed appear to largely are nearly like for like, not quite, but are of the historic character, finish, material to appear to complement the existing building. As such, it appears to meet criteria number 2 about not adversely materially affecting the historic qualities. The glazing is of the same thickness. Doors with similar architectural patterns and proportions. They also propose to use a color scheme appropriate for the era, which is not necessarily required for the guidelines, but it's certainly appreciated. Let's see. The frames are proposed to remain for the windows, which is also seems to benefit the overall historic character. Let's see. looking at the proposed work having no adverse material effect on the historic atmosphere or character of the district. Staff doesn't believe will have an adverse impact on the district as a whole. These are relatively minor changes anyway, but they do complement building and district. We've reviewed guidelines, the design guidelines, and viewed against the window and door requirements for glazing for treatment of doors and windows. It appears to meet our guidelines, appears to also meet Park Service state guidelines for replacement of distinctive features. The severity of deterioration of existing doors appears to require replacement. Let's see, it seems to be the appropriate treatment rather than repair. Let's see, I'll just briefly go over this. Number 5, effect upon general historic and architectural character. We've touched on this. It appears to be maintaining similar architectural style, complement the existing facade, does not detract from the existing character, appears to be compatible with other structures in the district, other doors, other windows, and glazing in the district. Does not appear to create, change, destroy, or otherwise affect the exterior architectural features of the structure. So complementary for the guidelines, in our opinion. It's protection, enhancement, and perpetuation of the structure. Staff believes that this will do that. Again, as mentioned, the doors are in fairly bad shape, and replacing them will create a much safer and more secure building that will be allowed to be used well into the future with these doors and the new glazing. While there's not necessarily a public health implication to the existing buildings, again, none of this will. Let's see. Part of this project, any items that require attention to be rehabilitated as part of the overall. A lot of this is interior work. No structural work proposed as part of this. Windows. It's also a small condenser AC unit for the roof, but that would be a small project exemption. It won't be visible from major sight lines. But if there is structural work needed, that would need to come to city staff to determine whether an additional COA was needed, things like that. It's possible it wouldn't, it's possible it would, but that as of now, under the scope of work that we reviewed, did not appear to be. So with all of that, staff believes the proposed work does substantially conform to the city's guidelines and Secretary of Interior standards, and as such recommends approval. And we did put a sample motion in the packet. So
Thank you. Committee members, do you all have any questions for Dylan regarding the staff position or anything that we just heard?
no.
No? Okay, so at this point, I'd like to invite the applicant to cover anything that you think we still need to hear, anything that Dylan didn't cover.
Thank you, Dylan. Yeah, thank you. My name.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was gonna ask you, just to say your name, so I'm
Yes.
sorry I cut you off. I was
Yeah.
gonna-
Yes, my name's Joel, and I own Design Build and Co. And we've been engaged by Paul and Brett as owners of the building to do the work, and this is my assistant Evan. Paul. I'm Paul. I own the building. We'd like to make it look good. We hired Joel. Very good. We've actually been excited, not because of the exterior elements, but just to be able to show you the entirety of the building. Not take up any unnecessary time, but we've had a very good time going through this in order to try and produce something that we hope that you all be proud of. We've taken steps in order to maintain not just the exterior elements, but the interior elements as well. In fact, we made a concerted effort in terms of the amount of history that we've done on the building. John Traden was an amazing man, as you read back throughout anything. And although a different, from what I've read, a different political party than the newspaper editor at the time, they seem to have gotten along very well as friends. And I love the pokes that the editor used to give Mayor Trahan on a regular basis. So it's been very spirited to learn about the mayor and his wife and how much they've meant to the community. And we, when we first started speaking with Brett and Paul about the building and found out their interest in maintaining that historicity, we were very impressed and we wanted in, essentially. So, but as Dylan had stated, we are looking to go ahead and affect the outdoor parts which are in need of maintenance. There's some light retucking of the mortar, which we'll be using a like mortar, seashell based, sand based mortar for that as well, to repair the brick. Really, for all intent and purpose, we should have a new look to the front without changing any overall effect whatsoever. That's what we're looking at. But we do have 3Ds that we've brought. I can see that someone was nice enough, Dylan, I imagine that was you, to provide copies, or whoever it was. Thank you for doing that. But we are hooked into Zoom here, and we could go ahead and broadcast.
We'd love to see it, even if it goes beyond, I think, the exterior scope. We do like to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
From just a general sense. And I don't think, if you guys are cool with it, it's not taking up any excess time. Good, okay, please do.
You folks know more about this than I, but what was impressive about Paul's team was his reference to that mortar. That seashell mortar, as I understand it, is from that time period. It's not the mortar used today. And this is the kind of depth of analysis that I've been able to get from Bill's team.
So it's a low strength mortar.
Yes. Yes.
So as not to crack the brick.
Correct. Especially during the freeze thaw periods that we have and enjoy. Yes, exactly. Are we up? Can you see? Okay, all right. So this is the building itself. Let's go ahead and do a 3D from the outside and go to street side. The most important thing about the glass, and I'm familiar with the National Historic Standards in terms of what they're looking for. We will be placing a low emissivity coating between the double glazing, just so that whoever is occupying the building doesn't get heated up, and we don't have to unnecessarily run HVAC in order to keep them cool in summertime. As a young man, I helped replace the floor at Bojo's up here. And I can tell you that in August, all the way through October, I burnt like a crisp. And so I felt it important to go ahead and add the low emissivity coating between the two. What you see as a representation in front of you is no different than what is actually installed today. We're not altering the sizes, we're not altering the cross bucks in the windows, or in this particular case, they would be known more as muntins. And the low emissivity coating doesn't add anything as far as any darkness to it. It simply goes ahead and cuts down on the heat while allowing the light to come through the glass.
It's necessary for an east facing front like that.
Yes, absolutely. And as we look into the side alley of the project, you can see our replacement door. You can see our replacement door. The samples that we're giving you, which were sent out to all of us, those are simply bookmarker samples which show the size of the glass. It's our intention to ensure that the panels actually match the panels that are on the building right now. We're going to go to that level.
So the lights within the doors will be the same size as the historic lights?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
That was gonna be a question.
Yes, yes. And the same thing with the transom above the alleyway on Central Alley here. Now, understand that this is not a working transom, and I don't know if it ever was a working transom. This certainly would have been probably where Mr. Trey then was, bringing in his goods for manufacturing or printing or whatever he was using the building for at the time, as he was all of those things. And perhaps this even served as a funeral home, as he was, the undertaker up here as well for a time during that history. But that door is oversized and it will match the dimensions exactly. And it's our intent to make sure that the glazing in the doors matches as well. We've also gotten, because I feel like it's very important, I introduced myself, as did Brent Paul, but I introduced myself to Lynn, the accountant, who has the Foursquare home that's connected to this building. And she was very excited to hear about the changes and to see what we had proposed, as well as the Burnhams, which live next door to her, one home west, whose backyard has been instrumental in our access of the building as we've gone through design. And the Burnhams, Rob and Marion, have been fantastic, just fantastic. In fact, Marion took me through her house because she wanted to show me all the details that they've gone through and done. And I assured her we're looking to do the same thing here.
Well, yeah, she's gonna see the back of the building.
She is, absolutely. It's gonna be your backyard. If we go back in through the front doors. So the space is not going to change, with the exception of some cabinetry that we're putting in the back. Where you see the white wall right now, where you see Evan's cursor, was storage that we went ahead and we've already disassembled that. And we've got it in a pile.
Is that storage original to the building?
It wasn't, it was 2x4s, yeah.
I couldn't tell because it used to be all that wooden shelving in the back, and I didn't know if he built furniture there, or like, was that original to the building?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, once I noticed that it was all ink stamped with the ASTM standard on it, I just went ahead and said, that's not historic, we can go ahead and remove.
Is there anything historic interior?
There was not, with the exception of a stove, which we're going to be relocating in order to refinish and then reintroduce to the building once it's done.
Excellent.
So that was the only thing. The toilet, the vanity, there was nothing historic about either one of those.
While that's not our purview, I always ask about that because if there are historic features and you don't need them, we can always help you find a home for them. People like to keep our historic features within the community, so.
Absolutely, yes. Doorknobs, hinges, all of those. So, and it's our intent to go ahead and maintain the same thing here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the bathroom that we're replacing doesn't have anything historic in terms of door handles, or it looks like it was probably about 80s into the 90s when someone.
Like I said, that's not our purview, like we only are concerned with the exterior, but we're all just a little bit nosy, so.
Sure.
We like to know what you're doing inside too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know when any of you were in the building last, but it does have a stamped metal ceiling with cove that comes down the corner. I have actually found an outfit in Oklahoma City in which we are going to be partnering with in order to replace one of the panels. And they're going to help us in the restoration process as far as providing us with some guidelines on how those were tacked in place. So that once we're done, because it's our intent to go ahead and remove 5 of those panels on top of the one that's missing. And to go ahead and replace them, but take the ones that we're taking down back up. But we still have one that's missing right in the middle of the back of of the building, and they're going to help us with restoring it for something that would blend with the rest of the ceiling there. So our intent is to go ahead and maintain that, and it's one, if I did ever want to touch it, I wouldn't, well, let's put it this way, Brett, Paul's wife is in love with that ceiling show. No, so I have marching orders. My marching orders are clear.
No, the ceiling is beautiful.
It is.
Just gotta fix that little piece. I don't. Now, what are we doing to clean it then?
We're going to be washing it, and then it will be, there is a wipe that we'll have that contains an enzyme, and then we will be priming it and painting, repainting. Since it is primed and painted now, so unfortunately it was painted. I love to see those that are the old silver and the old copper style, but this was painted, and the financial cost at stripping everything and then placing it back up there, I can't even imagine what that would have run, but at least the steel is going to be there, or tin, I should say. We will be adding cabinetry. We will be adding to a break room / kitchen area in the back, and adding a refrigerator. All of these are to ADA standard. The door that you see right in front of you is going to be a small room meant for storing whatever needs to be stored there. It's not going to be very large. It's going to be probably the size of an oversized pantry. And then we will be doing an ADA bathroom on the other side. Now, we already have brick that we intend to blend. There's the, what happened? Furnace a second while we can just do a little bit of remodeling on our, your faucet keeps raising up out of the sink as well. Poltergeist.
That looks cool on the wall.
Poltergeists do happen with our particular 3D program. I apologize. Everything that's in here is defined by ADA as passable standard, as well as the dimensions between all of the fixtures. The building currently has a half concrete and half floor joist with hardwood floor on top of it inside. And I'm stymied by that. We know that this was the first, one of the first modern post offices. This building served as the post office for Idaho Springs. And at that time, it also had a barber shop next to it in the same building.
Does the dividing line between the material run north, south, or east, west?
The both. Is it Mike?
Yes. Because the barber shop was on the north side.
Yes, right.
Post office on the south side.
Right, exactly. And it runs, the floor joists are probably around 2/3 of the front of the entirety. And then the concrete runs all the way from Central Alley, all the way up to the other side of the building. So we've been confused as to why that is.
Did that garage used to belong to that building? Did the garage used to belong to that building, or?
I don't know. This building doesn't show up on the 1900 Sanborn map, but it does show up on the 1907 Sanborn map.
I think it was built in 1906.
Yeah, so I'm not certain why they would have used the concrete, but it's our intent to go ahead and remove the concrete. It's our intent to go ahead and dig down and give the entirety of the building the same exact crawl space. And by doing that, we're going to allow the building to breathe easier. Indoor air quality is going to be improved. I don't want to jinx anything here, but I'm certain that what we're doing is going to allow the building to last well after I'm gone. And that's always our intent. Not my exact death, I'm not trying to pretend anything, but I think you understand what I'm saying is this building has been enjoyed by more than a couple generations, and I would like for them to be able to continue to enjoy it for some time to come.
So what you're doing then is creating a white box project.
We are creating a white box project for the purposes of Brett and Paul being able to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of who they might lease to. While we've applied with Safe Built for the interior work on a separate permit, which we're just finalizing now. And this would be the second half of our permit, the two exterior elements. The business operation would be the code that we are building to. But it certainly qualifies for mercantile as well, given the lack of parking and so on. Pretty limited in terms of restauranting or anything along that line because of the parking, but that I think even just those two items give Brett and Paul plenty of opportunity to find someone to.
You also have fee and lieu. Planning Commission has passed the fee and lieu.
Mhm.
So depending on what you're doing, I was on the Planning Commission when this happened. We did that so that people that are downtown and can't do much with the parking, because we do have residential parking down there, you know.
Is there something in the chapter 21 about a credit essentially, it doesn't say historic buildings, but in other words, this was built where people did not have cars. And there's a section in the parking to where you don't really have to create beyond what was there before because the building pre-exists the automobile period. That's up for us to decide, but
That might
it's worth looking
conflict
into.
with the Planning Commission's, our adaptation of the fee and lieu.
There's a section in the code, so I think it's, we don't have to decide that.
No, that's not even our
It's-
lane.
right,
We're
but-
we're
But
totally,
it's
Nice
something
to
worth,
hear about it.
it's
Yeah.
worth looking at it because there's a section in there, and many older communities have this for their downtowns. They essentially say, okay, this is a building that a business has been operating here for all these years without parking. As long as you don't increase the demand for parking.
that's, or you change the zoning. You change like what, not the
Yes.
zoning, you change the
Yeah.
use. Use, thank you, usage,
But that's more for, that's a zoning issue, that's not our issue.
no. But that's something to look into as far
Yeah,
as
we'll have to
parking.
understand
Look
it.
at the fee in lieu and see section 21 of the code.
It's part of chapter 21, in the parking section. It's in sort of an odd,
Because that's never had great parking there, ever.
it's got kind of odd wording.
Don't get all that's kind of important. I'm sorry, did we interrupt? Please go on.
Not at all. All this information helps us. I mean, I'm sure Paul appreciates it as well.
Sooner or later, we'll have to tackle it.
We
First, we need a building that's attractive enough to let out.
You know, it's a beautiful building. I'm really glad that you're redoing it. Go on, I didn't interrupt. I have questions for you, but they can.
that's quite all right. I started after 7 years combat arms in the United States Army with Sherwin-Williams. And where I came from was working in historic colors with Sherwin-Williams. This was back in Michigan, where I hail from. I won't bother to bring my Michigan accent back to bore you guys and put you to sleep and make you laugh with hilarity. But suffice it to say, I've worked on quite a few historic homes in terms of ensuring that, you know, we are maintaining the look of the neighborhood. We understand the importance to the community. And so in Brett and Paul hiring us, they had to hire someone opinionated. I'm sure they didn't know that at the time, of wanting to make sure that that's what we were doing here as well. So our color schemes were from the historic palette of 1900 to 1910 for Sherwin-Williams. So go back and just finish up on the small elements inside because of the fact that it is an open building right now currently. And we're not going to change that. we are going to, when we do replace place new floor joists where there were none, where the concrete floor was, and we put the flooring, hardwood flooring back in, it will be the same exact size that's coming out. It's gonna be 2¼ inch strip, just as it was in 1906. So I hope that we are making Mr. and Mrs. Traden smile somewhere by what
The colors of the flooring are.
the colors of the flooring as well. And then the same thing with the base. We're going to emulate the base that's there. We work with Tabor Mills down in right on the edge of Denver Aurora, and they're able to go ahead and take the trim that's there and actually manufacture a knife which would match the trim, and we'll have that same exact trim going in at the end of the day. So we're pretty pleased in the way that this will turn out, and we certainly hope that you guys will be pleased as well.
Questions?
No, I think it's awesome, because that's an awesome building.
Oh God, that's a beautiful
It's
building.
good to see that somebody cares about it from the heart.
Well, someone told us from the city that there have been a couple of cases in town. And we didn't know about this before entering into this, where sometimes permission wasn't exactly granted. And I certainly come from that background of wanting to ensure that we are up to that level, and if not surpassing.
Well, because of those cases, this commission has gotten a little more strict about, here's the thing, if you have COA and something goes awry, get in touch with Dylan immediately, because even though this does add a step to how you do things from the exterior, we're pretty good about, like, we've called emergency meetings. Sometimes we have small project exceptions or, small project things that don't really affect the COA that either myself and Dylan or Mike and Dylan can go ahead and approve. Like, we are always willing to work with you, but you have to come and talk to us.
Absolutely, which is why we're here.
Don't come and ask for permission and forgiveness. Come in and say, hey, this isn't gonna work. We will always try to work with you, because all of us that are on this commission, Shannon's not here today, but all of us that are on this commission really are committed to maintaining our historic district. And maintaining that integrity.
Appreciate the amount of information you provided in the application, but one question I have is at the main entry to the building, the photograph shows all wood around the doors, and the elevations show brick. I'm assuming that's just because that's simplifying the architectural drawing.
It is a limitation on our program.
Okay.
That we can certainly provide more detail.
No,
Committee was asking, but
it's a matter of just knowing that it will remain a wood entry around the two doors.
correct. All of the windows stop, all of the doors stop, everything we intend to do. And it's the same, I want to make sure that the committee knows as well, it's going to be the same way with the glass. Most of that is all dry rot that's holding the glass in. So that also represents a bit of a safety issue right now, given the fact that those plates of glass are huge and heavy. And one is already broken in terms of, we don't know where it broke from. And I'm sure it's because of thermal expansion and contraction. But we want to make sure that everything that goes back in is going to be brand new, so that we can and it matches what was there in order to maintain again the look, the overall look.
Are you replacing all of the glass in the front?
We are.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was all or just a piece of it or just some of it.
It's virtually impossible to. There are all but 2 panes that are dual glazed. There are 2 that are still single glazed, correct?
No, there's more than that. There's top row is single glaze, and I think order 2 here or single glaze, but everything else is coming.
So at some point in time, when they decided to replace, they decided to go ahead and replace with a dual glazed system. Makes sense in terms of being able to keep the sun out, makes sense in terms of being able to keep the temperatures down, or regulated, I should say. But in our particular case, there is nothing preventing preventing us from using the same historic wood stomp around the windows to replace them with, whether they're dual or single glazed.
Any other questions?
So it's not on here, but I'm just asking for my own interest. Are you doing, other than the tuck pointing, are you doing any brick or exterior work? Because when you look on the south side, on this side, and then you also see some, you probably see it on the back, the west side too. There's some significant crack.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we do have in our bid to Brett and Paul for replacement where we can. We have a source for that brick. And that brick just happens to be sitting in Marion and Rob Burnham's backyard.
It's
So
amazing what we all hang on to.
yes, it is, and thankful. Because to try and find a sand brick of that age and of that color is almost impossible. So I've not talked to Marion or Rob about this at length. It's my intention to here at some point in time next week. But yes, our intention is to go ahead and it still can be repaired even with the mortar that Mike and I were talking about earlier. It can still be repaired if we do have to leave any broken pieces in there. You'll notice it's not just on the south side. It is on the north side, on the street side,
Mhm.
where the connection happens to the garage that Lynn rents to her renter that is subgrade there.
Mhm.
So because of the fact that it's north side and it gets so very little light, water, just so those bricks are like sponges.
Mhm.
And it just, forces that mortar out. It's just a little marching effect of it just pushing it out until it finally leaches because it is broken. And then a good rain comes in or a snow and just washes it all away. The historicity that I was referring to earlier isn't just harkening back to Mayor Traven. I've had an opportunity now to speak with mountain woodworkers who are all down next to Conrad's hot dogs down here. He had his overhead door open and I had no idea that was, I just saw the logo and I pulled right in and I said, how would you like to go ahead and do some of our woodwork on the inside of that? He said, I'd love to. So we're actually speaking with them right now, engaging the old tenant in order to do some of the work. So as you can see, historic appropriateness to me is important, not just in terms of reaching back 118 years, but 10 years ago.
Okay, anybody else? I will say I appreciate that you spoke with the neighbors. This is a small town, memories are long, so if you don't work with the neighbors, people don't forget that. That is a definite positive for you guys.
It's fun.
Well, and the programs are great. They are fonts of information. But I'm very glad to see you're using the same paints too. I like the paint colors. I like those more subtle paint colors. Sound like you had some.
Oh, no, I'm gonna recommend 2 conditions consistent with what we discussed here, just.
Okay, what conditions would you?
The first is that the lights in the new doors match the size of the new doors match the size of the existing lights. And the second one is that the entry recess in terms of material matches what's shown on the photograph rather than what's on the drawing.
Sure.
That's
Absolutely.
fair.
Happy to oblige.
You as Hprc want to consider also adding tuck pointing, we might suggest if we're okay with, all the tuck pointing, replacement of brick like adding that into the motion for what.
Because
I
they
think-
will have to come back for check. If you're doing exterior brickwork, that also comes before us.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Is that-
I would have gone ahead and included it on this.
Well, that's why I was asking about it, because I was surprised that it wasn't on here.
Yes,
Well, that's good.
I was wondering if,
We could
I
add.
wonder that would come under maintenance rather than, it's not an alteration.
No, but if it's replacing bricks, would it still fall under maintenance?
Is it replacing a lot of bricks or is it a few bricks?
We've got probably around only 8 to 12 that are in need of replacement. The
That
rest,
covers the north side as well?
the rest of what's there. I mean, while we have some erosion that has occurred on the sharp corners of the bricks in order to see them rounded, it's not really going to impede the structural integrity of the brick with.
It seems like 12 bricks out of several thousand sounds like maintenance.
So could we do that under a small project where it comes to you, or just quick oversight?
I think we certainly could, the mortar work and, certainly would be that maintenance and repair, in my opinion. And then if it gets to be more than, say, a few dozen bricks, maybe then I'll have a meeting with one of the two of you as available to see at what point it becomes a bigger project if the commission was.
I would actually like to add that, so that way you guys are covered in what you were supposed to be following as far as working.
So it isn't a question later. So it doesn't become a
yeah, so
question
it doesn't
later to define it now.
Yes,
Yeah, I only wanted to bring that up now because we didn't really talk about it, and yeah, I would say minor, tough pointing things like that, replacement of mortars, likely a small project, but if we can establish that in the meeting tonight, then, yeah.
let's save you guys from coming back to see us, for that. So definitely, I like the condition with the lights, maintaining the materials in the
Recessed entry.
recessed entry. Then, how would you phrase
Yeah,
this?
I mean, I guess, if the recommended, we could also add a motion, potentially, as part of the motion,
One of the conditions,
yeah,
put
we
it in the
could
condition.
make it a condition or say, approve this, you could say approve the certificate of appropriateness for replacement of front facade windows, replacement of side and front of the entry doors, and minor tuck pointing and brick replacement as needed, or we could create a condition saying, tuck pointing, replacement mortar, brick replacement is a small project exemption, but beyond a certain point, it has to be reconsidered.
How many bricks? You said a couple dozen, 24 or 36?
I
It's
imagine-
better to get this,
We're probably talking about several thousand
okay.
bricks. I'm guessing.
Yes. If you gave me 2 or 3 minutes, I could ask my trusty assistant here to go ahead and calculate it up. And we could probably have an answer on that for you. But yes, we're in the tens of thousands as far as the brick goes, yes. So even if you were
I give
to,
them 3 dozen.
That's what I was thinking. Over 36 bricks. Come back and talk to us.
and Marion and Rob don't have that many in their backyard. So it was our intent, my intent along with the mason, as we, reviewed the brick that needed to be missing, was to try and take advantage of what is still there and what's still usable. Some of the stuff they've got sitting in their backyard is not usable.
Mhm.
And I'm very familiar with Mendoza brick, and I don't know if anyone else is. I would believe that the Historic Review Commission may have heard that name before, but Ralph Mendoza has a yard in Denver in which they've gone ahead and taken apart historic buildings and preserved as many brick as possible. So we will be, so if it does get to the point where we are needing to repair more than 3 dozen, I'll certainly reach out to Dylan immediately, just as I have, and we will go ahead and bring it in front of, I just don't see where we're gonna need
Okay.
to do that, but I appreciate that.
Are the Jacob House bricks a similar brick to this? Because I know that there are 2 pallets of the Jacob House bricks. I think the city has one, and I think Tommy Knockers has one. There we go. Oh, so there's 3 pallets of bricks. Alrighty. We had a building that came down last year, a year and a half ago, and a bunch of people and organizations took bricks. So there may be, if you need more, there may be some.
There may be a source.
I
source.
appreciate-
Maybe. You'd have to look at them. I don't know if they're the
Sure.
same, the same
Yeah,
make.
They didn't have a lot of, they had some standards back then, as you all know, but there were a lot in terms of bricks. as far as different sizes and so forth. And then there were also, you know, the different wides of brick, the softer being the exterior and the harder, uglier ones being the interior. So depending upon what's available out there, we would certainly tap the commission as far as finding out what resources we could go ahead and utilize. So I appreciate that very
Well,
much.
we like to see stuff reused if we can here.
Sure.
So how do you all feel about adding like a number 3 and for the maintenance, tuck pointing and replacement of?
It's the easiest place to find it if it's made a condition. So if there's any question, if it's on the form, on the certificate, that makes it easy to find.
Okay. So would you rather have it a condition or part of the listed?
It doesn't have to be called a condition,
Okay.
it's more of just, it's a statement that could be put in there.
Okay,
Yeah, and I have it written down as like tuck pointing, mortar, repair and replacement of up to 36 bricks will be considered a small project exemption. Anything beyond that will need to come before city staff.
and then also Mike's conditions about the lighting.
Yep, lights in the
Lights.
door, shall
Lighting-
match.
lights
And
and
it's
doors.
spelled LITE,
Okay.
The
when
glass,
you have glass in the door.
glass lights, yeah.
And
Then entry materials in the recess to the front entry door be maintained with the existing material rather than its.
Or matching material,
Matching.
so it's not, so they're not held down to trying to
Yes.
do more wood putty than wood.
Yeah, I'm sorry that this is not a representation. I'm got a little egg on my face here,
It's-
but
It's a very good drawing otherwise.
no, it's a good drawing. We've already seen a lot of the architectural programs. There are limitations in how detailed they can get.
well, ours is not rudimentary by any means, but certainly.
Is this SketchUp or Revit or?
No, this is this predates Revit. This is called Chief Architect.
Oh,
And
chief, okay.
I've been using,
That's very popular with contractors.
I've been using it since around 1998. So, and we watched it blossom and grow. Unfortunately, perhaps not as much as things change at a rapid pace today. So who knows what updates we'll have.
Borrow.
We did just re-up our license. It's not an inexpensive program to own, I'll tell you that much. So I'll certainly put the recommendations in there. So if I'm to understand right, you will allow us to go ahead and put the conditional in there for the mortar and retuck along with the same approval that we're doing today
Yes.
for the glazing and for the doors
For the doors.
and the woodwork around the doors. Is that, am I hearing correctly?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we like to try to get as much done in one meeting because it makes it easier for everyone.
Yeah, we certainly could have included it. I kind of overlooked it in some ways because a lot of it is minor exemption, but since it was brought up, figure might as well make it as clear as possible. So that way won't be questions later on, so.
Absolutely.
Any further questions? Any further discussions? Anything further from staff? All right, I would entertain a motion with,
But we need to formally close the hearing.
oh, that's right. Okay,
We never opened the hearing.
We never did?
No, nobody was signed in, this was not posted as a hearing.
no, it's just new business.
Okay.
All right. I would entertain a motion with our additional conditions.
I moved as discussed. For what.
That's the best way to do it.
For what Dylan has written up.
Yes, I will second that.
And I will let you know.
Yes. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So passed. Congratulations.
And I will send the draft condition language to the three of you to make sure it looks good.
I have a question for you. This is a very good example of a white box project. Once you get it finished, would it be okay for us to take some interior photographs?
That would be truly up to the owner. Yeah, sure.
This is a very good one to show people how to do it the right way.
Please, come by, bring a tenant, folks.
Thank you very much for the compliment. That was probably in 27 years of doing this, that was probably one of the best compliments that I've been offered. Thank you. Very gracious.
And we appreciate that you're attempting to follow the historic build path that this building has had, which is squeeze it into what you would like.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that people do that, and it's unfortunate that people forgo the whole permit process altogether. And it keeps our names as contractors, at the bottom of occupation of what you'd ever want to be called in this life. But I'm proud to do it. So, and we're happy to be here.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay.
I thank you for all of your help.
Yes, and I will follow up with an email.
We're done.
We're dismissed.
You're just, yes. No, and anything that you guys have, if you have any issue, I have to just reiterate this, if you have any issues, any challenges, any surprises, please get in touch with Bill, because we can work with you, like, we're always happy to work with you. We
Thank
don't
you.
like it when you come back and say, we'd like forgiveness.
Yes.
Okay, we get that, I get that clearly. We get that.
Absolutely. I didn't get either one of your names.
Oh, I'm Patty Tyler.
Patty Tyler,
Lisa Manifold.
Lisa Manifold, Joel Oten. And Mike, what was your last name?
Davenport.
Davenport. I'm sorry that I didn't catch yours either.
I'm wondering.
Oh, right. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank here. It's crowd. It's the nervousness of the crowd here. So sorry, Wonder.
That's okay.
And thank you for the help, by the way.
Sure thing.
You've been fantastic with information as well.
Thank you
guys.
all. Okay, then, if there's no further old business, then I will close the meeting at 6:52 and we are adjourned. Because now we have to get into our work session.
Board, have a wonderful meeting.
It's still a public meeting though, isn't it? Because it's been noticed, that's all that happened.
Yeah, no, like work session is still, it'll still be broadcast.
Okay, so the broadcast will cover, okay.
Yeah, but there's
In
no
terms of
notes are
having it-
taken.
There's no, no
But
minutes
the
for
broadcast
work
will
session.
cover
Yeah,
that.
so the broadcast covers
If someone
everything.
else. Okay.
Yeah, we'll continue this up. It's still being broadcast live on YouTube, and it'll be posted on the website and all of that, but this is just our opportunity to.
Did you ever get a chance to look at the guidelines?
I did, yes.
Sort of.
So, would it make sense for me just to add a couple of things I wanted to mention, I guess, if you don't mind me starting
Go
us
right
off.
ahead.
So Maria and I have both been working on the guidelines updates. Few things we've been doing. I guess we'll just start with the guidelines first. In our last work session, we really dug in and said, redline the plans, have track changes, things like that. So I'll just talk about a few of the items we've added. At the very start, I've reconfigured some of the introduction, trying to, as Shannon had talked about, how you're getting the history first, get a little purpose, things like that. I also went ahead and added our historic district right at the start, a map of that, so people kind of get a better sense of what these regulations actually the other things, key things that were added really that I wanted to get some discussion on was first, and I'm just going through and then stop me if I jump over anything. It's like first thing I have in the intro is like small project exceptions. We added an exception, potential exception for minor amendments to an approved COA, where we may be able to review it administratively by city planner in consultation with chair or vice chair. The thinking being, if we have an example like this one tonight where they say, well, actually we have the tuck point portion of the wall or something, do we really need to come back for a full additional meeting, or could we look at it, see that the scope was relatively small, and then kind of administratively approve it? That's my thought.
I'm okay with that. It needs to be the city planner and then either the vice chair or the chair. Like, I think it needs to be two people, not just one person that makes that call. Two people need to make that call.
It should be the chair if the chair is available, and then it's the vice chair if
Yes.
you're not available.
Like, if I'm not available, absolutely call Mike. But my thing is more, I want there to be two sets of eyeballs versus just one looking at it and making a call.
Right. And I think what I'd like to potentially do as like a policy item would be like set up a meeting with just like Mike, myself, whoever the applicant happens to be, and say, let's talk this through, see what the change is, and then make a determination. Yes, this is a small project. No, this actually needs a review. That way, it's not just a base of it's something.
I would also, and I think I'm good with that. How do you guys feel? I'm good with that. Because that means, like, right now, everybody is we all work together well, but we will not be here forever. I would like this to be able to work for people when we're not. The other thing, and I don't know where to put this, I was thinking maybe maintenance and repair. If there is an emergency, because that's something that I'm seeing, like there are some buildings that I'm concerned about. How do we do emergency repair? Because this just says maintenance and repair, but it's not an emergency, which is a time sensitive thing. Can we do something similar where it's the city planner and either the chair or the vice chair?
I think it could be left to if the staff cannot get a hold of chair or vice chair, the staff is delegated the decision if it's emergency. In another place, one of the places where I worked, there were several cases of trees about to fall on buildings. And that community required you to get approval to remove any tree. And I just authorized it because I could not find anyone higher up. There were 3 people who should have been making the decision. None of them were available. So I just said, I'm authorizing you to remove the tree.
Yeah, I want something in there because we have the same, you all will see it in the language around the sites and facilities as well. How do we have, like, what do we do if something is teetering, or crumbling, or
And that's what was happening with these trees.
Yeah.
They were about to fall on the
they're about to
house.
fall? So maybe if you just put a little something in there about how there is a process in place for people to employ, if there is something that qualifies as an emergency.
So would you say that prior to completion of the repairs, contact the city planner who consults with the chair or vice chair as needed, or do we foresee like a scenario where something could be eminently about to, there's a leak and you can see the building, they want to do something immediately? Would it be they come to us after the repairs complete? Because I'm sure people will do that just naturally because they know about this or something, but we want to put the wording in to say like prior to completion of the emergency?
I think prior to completion gives them a little bit of room. Like they can get the work started and contact. The thing is, contact is so much easier than it used to be. It's a simple text. Hey, my wall is falling down. Can I please get some help from the city as far as making sure I don't blow the guidelines?
I wonder that they would have to contact you prior to final sign off by the building inspector.
I would be okay with that. I just don't want repairs done that are, oh, it's emergency repair, and then our historic guidelines are not followed, because to me that nibbles away that are historic guidelines.
Now,
I'd almost rather have this to be a policy rather than put it in the guidelines. If
Well, I think you also have to define what is an emergency.
yeah, that's.
Does an emergency start because for the last 4 months you've been not taking care of something and now all of a sudden it's to the point where it's gonna fall down?
And I think that is maybe something we can look at the building code for. Because that's probably defined in the building code as to when there's imminent danger from a condition in the building. And that's what we're dealing with, is basically, is there something that's going to cause harm to persons or property?
Well, and unfortunately, like, I'm very glad that this group came, because that building was starting to look sad. And I was worried, but there's a couple of other buildings that I have concerns about. Maybe just in maintenance and repair, something that they just need to contact you.
Sure, well, and I was thinking maybe like if, like prior to completing the repair work, consult with the city planner, consult with the Hprc chair or vice chair as required. If the COA is required, then like only enough work to kind of address the emergency should be completed, shall be completed. Because we may need that, because, I could see, if I need to protect, like if we have a sites and facilities issue, like a water main breaks and the side of the building's about to collapse, like the emergency repair work is likely not you wouldn't have to do a permanent repair to get it to a place where it no longer is a danger.
I think before finalizing this, I think it would be good to take a look at the building code, see
And see how they,
how it's covered
okay,
now,
so maybe we
because-
put, take a note of looking at the building code. I'm worried, just given some of the history that we've had with some of the buildings that have come before us, I see concerns.
Well, this is a very good one to get pictures inside and outside of it and use this as to show other people, this is how it should be done when you come in and do a project.
Yeah, this is kind of dreamy, I'm like, this is too.
Well, they throughout the whole process were very good about, like the first thing that they presented to me was like 15 other projects they worked on that kind of are historic in nature to kind of show this is something they care about, which I think shines through.
Does that give you enough direction on this? I'm good with your minor amendments.
Okay, let's see. The other things I wanted to address.
Before we move on, did you have something, Mike?
I got some things where it's have some sort of more global comments, but I do have some specific. And I looked at the 4 questions you had in your memo that you were asking for direction on. And if you want, that's one of the simple ones is the website. What I would suggest adding, the web page looks better. Having that page is good. The things that I would think would be good to have ties to, there are 3 things from the National Park, from the National Park Service, it would be the Secretary of Interior Standards. To have a link to that. Have a link to the preservation briefs. And have a link to the National Register bulletins. And then the 4th one would be a link to the state, to OHD, to information regarding grants. Grants and tax credits.
That's a good,
Yeah,
because people do, but people need to know, like, people need to know what the timeline is, because I think that is a thing that people don't realize is that you have a certain, like, your clock is ticking.
yeah.
when
But
you
it can't
start-
start ticking before you get approval from the state.
Just to,
You can't, any money you spend before they say you've approved your grant
Doesn't
doesn't
count.
count.
It's not clear though. I went to like, I think 3 different sessions to get more clarification on our tax grants. I was like, if I was navigating this, I still would feel like I don't have a load,
For tax credits or for grants?
for tax credits,
Was that state or federal tax
the
credits?
state.
Okay. I haven't done a state one, I've done federal.
No, the state, there was some conflicting information and, I was like, a lot of it was clear, but where it wasn't clear, I was like, wow, there you go. 2 different ways on this one.
The feds are pretty clear, but I've never really looked into the state.
I think there's some discretion involved in the state.
There could be.
Okay, I like that idea though, putting, something about
yeah, I'm gonna just
tax
hop,
credits and
I
grants.
might just hop over the website discussion since we're on the subject. So I just pulled up our new website.
Which is
I don't know if everyone had
beautiful.
a chance to look at it. There's these different, so I will add a extra section here that says like link, something that is for those types of links for federal resources, state resources, things like that. As one of these green drop
Are the
downs.
how-to guides the ones that we were talking about before?
Yeah, that ultimately is my vision, so.
And the other one would be a link to the map and the list of properties outside the district that have been designated.
Yeah,
Because the first thing you want people to do is to look up and see.
Yeah.
Do they have to go through all this?
yeah, and I actually put that, I had a list of a few items that I wanted to discuss that I didn't have ready yet. One was the emergency, which we covered. Second was historic building register on the website in some way. Third would be, kind of like next steps, but anyway, so I think this is a work in progress. Where I want to go, like this page, for example, is make it a lot more user friendly. So once we adopt the new design guidelines, what I'd like to do is break it out here with like links to each particular section, so that way if you know like, well, I'm a non-contributing building, or I want to do an addition to a building, you can just go to part 3 of the guidelines, and it's more clear to say, like, obviously you want the full context of the guidelines, but really all I care about is I want to do an addition on in the back, you know? So making that more user-friendly with links, because that's the other thing, is once it's on the website, those hyperlinks, which Shannon talked about quite a lot, will be a lot easier to keep relevant, like a link
Oh, sorry.
within the guidelines.
I just think on there, there's a preservation how-to guide, like with your next steps, how do I go about, like,
Yeah,
okay, I know what I wanna do, what is my next step? Who do I get in touch with the city, what kind of, things do I have to have prepared, because we've talked about that, with making it more user-friendly, so that it's right there, that people know what's expected, and they don't call you and find a surprise.
yeah, so it's almost like an FAQs.
If you want to see a real good example, Town of Monument on their website. Okay. They've actually sort of turned it into a slideshow to sort of take you through the process of what's involved.
So yeah, the other thing that I was gonna, so kind of along that same line, I think developing like clear, like, how do I do this, like really detailed FAQs, and we'll look at monuments, and we'll look at a few other places to try to make it really streamlined. Because that's where I talk about, it's like how-to guides as well. It's like, let's say I only want to replace the doors of my historic building. Rather than read through an entire document, creating like this, which I included like a brief kind of sample in the packet, something where it says, okay, windows and doors, here's some pictures. You can have more pictures, that would be more interactive to say, here's some good examples, here's some bad examples, here's that specific code, and here's the links to the briefs and the presentation, like the one that I kind of mocked up. In fact, I did put in like the windows and doors brief there. So
Is it at the very end of the demo?
yeah, so it's
Yeah,
like
because
preservation brief number 9, repair of historic wooden windows. Preservation brief number 13, repair and thermal upgrading of historic steel window, those kind of briefs. So that way, if someone's like, I really care about doors, or if that's the only project I need to do, like someone can go to, like I could send them this, or we can have pamphlets at the front that say, oh, okay, and then you click the link, it goes right to that, you can read as much as you like. So that's something that I'm thinking is separate from the guidelines themselves. It's more of like accessory, complementary documents. Like I said, Marie and I have only done like 2 of them so far. We just kind of wanted to get a little feedback on if this is something that seems helpful, and if there's any anything that maybe would make it more helpful. And knowing that these are more dynamic, it's like we can update them without needing to get them adopted by city council. Because I'm thinking the guidelines are going to be the dense document that hopefully is easy enough to read, but maybe you don't need to read the whole thing just to find out what you're supposed to do with a hot tub.
So that is an excellent idea, because it frustrates many people that come across that were like, why do I have to have this whole thing? Where is it? Well,
Yeah,
don't know exactly, but it's in here,
yeah.
Well, are you going to have a
Easy to
feature where you
document.
can search for a term, like you could search for hot tub?
Well, insofar as when these document is on the website, it is searchable. So, if you do Control F, you can type in hot tub, and it'll just go to the 8 instances of hot tub in the code. And I think but as it's set up now, at least you couldn't like go to the table of contents and just click it in and pop to it. So I can work on that as well for the digital format.
I think with the how-to guides, it would be, and this is obviously when you guys have time to do these things.
In your spare time.
It would be good, like you started, is to have how-to guides for the main types of projects, which are new infill, additions, alterations, because those are the complicated ones where you want sort of a step-by-step thing. And then you'd be getting into, for example, the doors and windows, those are examples of alterations.
Yeah,
But the bigger things are infill and additions, like
right.
we had with that project that's going to go in with the performing.
The
Space.
Opera House building, yeah.
Because that's an example of an addition.
Right, that is a good idea because those, like windows or doors, really are pretty simple.
But they happen often, so it's good that you develop something for that.
Yeah, like I probably don't need one for hot rooms, because that's so straightforward.
Well, it's also covered.
I probably need one for solar panels, maybe, because that's an addition, and emerging technologies and things like
Oh,
that.
that reminds me, there was a fourth publication from the National Park Service. And that's what are called the interpretation of the Secretary's standards.
Oh my God.
Because specifically, they just rewrote their solar panel one.
Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, so you think like format wise, it looks.
I think so, and I like the way, we talked about this, like there's enough white space, because otherwise you just get a wall of text and you miss stuff.
Right,
I think you've done a nice use of the, of white space.
it still is like a pretty hefty, meaty document, of course, but what I think is, so I don't know, I didn't really add much else other than right now officially into the document, other than the appendices. So I did update the map, which is something that
The
Shannon
additions.
specifically asked for. I did also add a map of all of our historic resources, including the hot springs.
And also if with GIS, you could make a new map of the district that also shows the 2-block buffer
Oh, yeah.
that goes around it.
Yes.
Right, that's a good point, because I did not really add
I
a
would-
buffer. I would also add a buffer, because the buffer's only in the municipal code, I think.
It's chapter 21.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually in the guidelines.
No, it's
Would
not.
It's
you
not, but
like to add that?
I would like to add that, because I think the buffer is a surprise to people.
Mhm. I'll send this to you. This is something that I did for 1800 Colorado Boulevard. It was something, and it only took like an hour to put this together at the time, but they wanted to do a brick that was gonna look like tile. And I basically was trying to talk them into doing stone.
Oh,
But I put this together, it has the code requirement that says, if you're within 2 blocks,
right.
there are certain things you're required to do. In his particular case, I specifically researched, okay, what type of tile, what type of brick, what type of stone is actually commercially available in the area. And that may be something to get to someday, but not in the near term of saying it. But two other things along those lines is something to think about, and it doesn't have to be in this iteration, maybe it's a future iteration, is to look at going to some tables. And for example, the National Park Service has just done a table and a preservation brief on substitute materials. And they have sort of a nice table that says, okay, for these type of historic materials, these are acceptable substitute materials.
Could that be an accessory document, that brief and table?
Well, the brief itself could just be, you could just reference it. But I think those kinds of things would be, again, maybe it's not a near-term thing, but something to eventually do, is that those would be really helpful to applicants if they could look something up at the table and tell them, okay, we've already considered the fact that maybe you're going to have to substitute. And if you do substitute, these are things that we're willing to accept. And in a similar fashion, what's the other one? Oh, NAPC has done the same thing for roofing materials.
Also good.
Where they've done, again, they compared existing materials and substitute materials. I have some disagreements with both tables, but I think overall, it's a good approach.
Well, I think even if you have a disagreement with it, I think letting people know that there are some alternatives gives them, like, I think it helps them when they're planning their project.
It also makes the city look a lot better.
Yeah,
Well, there's that.
that's true, and I think that is kind of the key with what we're wanting to achieve with these, like, how to sort of thing, because you're right, like, if we're able to come up with our own, like, the modular brick that was talked about tonight, we might not be able to get it for that much
Oh,
longer.
the Mendoza brick.
Mendoza brick, yeah, sorry, Mendoza brick,
I like
we might not be able to
Mendoza.
get that for very much longer, but if we come up with consulting, whatever we need to consult.
Brick is its own, you could probably do a serious study of brick just in Idaho Springs.
Yeah, but yeah, substitute materials for that brick that might not be available anymore, it's probably something that people would benefit from, because if we can say, to the point.
And preservation brief number 2 was about mortar.
I was impressed that they said they were doing a seashell mix mortar.
Mhm. Yeah, that was the reason I asked them the question about if they're going with a low strength mortar, because that's a common mistake, is to put contemporary mortar, because then the mortar is stronger than the brick. So the cracks appear in the brick instead of in the mortar.
I did not know that. Okay.
Interesting. Well, I wanted to, that's good direction. I don't know if what other, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, I'm trying to find it in our packet. Got my report, but, our proposed new language. Check that. Yeah, okay, so it's down on like page 80. Maria was really critical in this section, so if there's specific questions, we'll have to pass it on to her. But we took the Mike spreadsheet that I'm really appreciative of that. We took that and applied, kind of pulled it all up, went through, looked at areas where we were lacking, but other places had things. And came up with, just as a start, the things that we clearly don't have in any way, shape, or form really anywhere, and added this as potential additions to part 2 of our guidelines, and then potential additions to part 3. A lot of the other things that were not specifically listed as us having on the guidelines chart, maybe were kind of referenced somewhere else, so maybe we can just kind of make those clear or something like that. These are kind of things that we said, okay, well, we don't really have anything about skylights. We don't really have anything about roof decks, etc. Is this something we want to add?
We're learning. I think in additions to part 3, when you talk about height of buildings, you have A, B, C, and D, and maybe E, no, that wouldn't be the buffer. Is that what we want to stick, be aware of the buffer around?
Well, I definitely,
Well, the buffer's mainly to let them know is that there are certain requirements that apply if you're within 2 blocks of the boundary of the district. That's the language is all in chapter 21. It's not in anything else. And most people don't know about it.
So, but I guess I'm asking, like, how do we incorporate it? Because people may think they have a historic house and they don't, like, woo, I don't have it. Like,
well, I think what I'm thinking is in the beginning, kind of where we have the small projects exemption area and the repair and maintenance, I'll put a Idaho Springs buffer zone, and it'll set reference,
can you link it
If
to
you're
chapter
within-
21?
yeah, rather than put the actual code language in, because that could change.
You basically say, see chapter 21 if
yeah.
you're within 2 blocks.
Right, and then it'll link or
I would like it in the
reference
beginning,
the
though.
section. I'll put that in part.
The other thing, and this is for a discussion for you to have with Andy, is whether or not you can put something on the front page that says the town includes historic buildings and historic structures, and be aware there are requirements related to any changes to those properties. And, you know, it's an Andy issue because I'm suggesting that be on the front page
Of our web.
of the website.
It's a good point, because if we did have, you know, you're right, and it's counsel in some ways as well to say, well, maybe it's just Andy, this, you know, because like on our front page, we have agendas and meetings, like that community development, pay online, et cetera, you know, like,
You know, this is asking to put something else on that page.
yeah, you know, historic preservation, or have something that, because there is like at the top, things that cycle through, like Switch to Fire Ban, vacant board seats, welcome to our website.
Maybe
so
just
that
maybe
makes
like in a
sense
historic preservation, it gets a tab as well. You know, gets an icon as well, and that green, and the first thing that's on that is, you know, something like, we have historic district, and we also have historic structures. See where you, like, see what your house is, see where you fall in, however we wanna.
I think the key thing to convey to them is that any changes to these properties may require approval prior to getting a building permit.
See, I don't think you can just put it under historic preservation. I think you have to do that same statement under planning. Because when people come in and plan, they're not looking at if it's historic or not.
That would be the other
So
way.
it would-
If
it would-
can't, if
should
it can't
be-
be on the front page, it would be under planning and under building.
Planning, building, and HPRC, all three of those have the same thing. You need to know what you're buying and what you're getting into and how you
Yeah,
can take care of it or do
Because
anything with
you
it.
buy somewhere, people may not tell you, I know two different people who own a building in the historic district who did not realize that A, we were a historic district, and B, they had state and federal guidelines to follow. I was like, are you joking? Your realtor didn't tell you? And they were like, no.
It's similar to the thing about sort of the thing about realtors saying, the realtor told me that open space was going to be there forever.
But I mean, you understand, like, I feel like if we can maybe,
That was on the news.
yeah. I think if we can ease some of our potential conflict by having it, and I love the idea of having it in all three places.
I'd say that if it can't be on the front page, then on all three pages would be the next, because
I think people are gonna be more prone to look at the information they're going to versus
Yeah.
the front page. And you don't want the front page to be too busy, otherwise
No.
it just gets lost. So I think especially planning and building need to have that, and
Yeah,
then of
so-
course HPRC.
like if I pulled this back up, so like when you go to, let's say, the front page, you know, you'd be here, you either go services, community development here, because I don't have, like, under here, maybe it should be,
But see,
but
community development, that's got all of it, that's got planning, plans
Yeah.
and guidelines, zoning, so you can put it right there.
that was gonna be my point, is I don't have my own planning page. Community development kind of serves as the planning page, so
Right.
on this front page where you click community development, I will put the historic preservation link and then say more information can be found to
It's-
the left or whatever.
it needs to be more than a link. It needs to basically be a friendly warning.
Right, yeah.
Like
something
where it says
along
the city of
lines
Idaho Springs is zoned before buying property or starting construction, check for allowed uses for your zone. You may
You want a
need,
statement like that for historic.
Yeah.
you may need to have approval from a historic preservation
Right,
standpoint before you can do things.
Before you can,
Or
do
you
things
can
or get
just-
a building
and
permit.
it'll say
Add
like,
that including.
Yeah, so you can put it
Right.
right there in that
yeah,
second
and
paragraph.
that's what I'm thinking is just, you know, before it says please contact the city planner, it'll say, you know, the city of Idaho Springs has a historic district in addition to a number
Historic
of
structures.
historic structures outside the district. So, workshop that. Please contact us before starting the project, or if you have questions on whether you're building this historic property, if you have any historic things. And then after all of that, say, you know, more information available and the links to, you know, something
Yeah,
like
that's a good
that,
idea.
where
It's right
um,
there.
that'll be, I'll even put it before the zoning. I'll do that
In red?
tomorrow. I don't know if I can make different colors. I'm not sure. I could probably make it,
You make it bold.
yeah, I could probably bold it.
Actually, bold it would be really good because we do have like, you know, people don't know that there's the 2 block buffer. They think,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not in the historic district, it's not listed, I'm golden, I can do whatever I want, and that is not the case.
So, I will update that. I won't
And then we
do
have
it
people in
right
here
now.
hopping up and down,
Yeah.
carrying on.
So, that's yeah, and I think the website is the sort of thing, obviously, we don't need to get it adopted by council. It's something that you know, you call me, I can add it I can add, I have full privileges for the website, but specifically for community development. So I can add anything, make it clearer, change things.
I think though, making things easier in this community development page is, so that's gonna make everybody's life here in City Hall easier.
Yeah, absolutely, because then you can either just quickly send a link or to someone, or you can just be like, oh, did you go to idaho.com? Great. You see the big thing in the bottom left here, click that. Great. Here's your link. You can just direct someone over the phone or by email so easily. So I think it would be quite helpful. It's just a matter of, as with anything, finding the time to add every single thing that we should add.
But I think Mike and Patty have a good idea. If you have it on that community development page, but you put it on planning, you put it on business, on the building, and you put it on HPRC. Because a lot of times people need to see things more than once before it sinks in, or they buy into it.
Yeah, and I should be able to update building. If not, I'll create the language on community development and ask Wonder.
Okay. What else did you have for us?
I think the key thing was what everyone thought about the proposed new potential sections, if any don't seem relevant, or if maybe you're missing, I don't know.
I think what you got are good. I think there would be some more that I would add. And the other thing is, it'd be good to sort of have more time to sort of go through in more
Yeah.
detail. Because in other words, there's some sort of very specific comments. For example, roof decks has part of the text there is definitions, and usually it's better to put definitions in a definition section rather than
Sure.
in a standard section.
What maybe what might be smart, because I didn't get this to you until last Thursday. I'm thinking regardless, because I'm gonna add little bits here and there, we should have one more work session on this, which we could do for the September meeting, or we could say October, whatever we want, but maybe, I don't know if, I don't want to put more work on folks, but like kind of going through these plus, offering up any others that maybe we'd like to add.
I think if you want, you might want to just distribute the chart
Yeah,
and see if
Right.
there's anything that you think we ought to add.
Okay.
It's on the chart from those 6 other communities.
I thought, because I went through and gave mine to you.
yeah, and you might be helpful. Because did you send those or just kind of,
I thought we talked.
we talked about it? And I
Yeah,
could have
if you send the
missed
chart around
something.
one more time, let's take a look at the chart and see
Yeah.
if there's anything that we are.
I'll send that out tomorrow morning. Let's say if you have some time in the next 2 weeks, then I can say, I think these should be added. I can add them in.
Yeah, I think if we had a deadline of 2 weeks, so that maybe you have within the 2 weeks time to make a composite of all the comments, and then we can spend a session going through all the comments
That's
and
what
decide what we keep or delete.
because if you think 2 weeks from today or like the end of, so like next 2 Fridays from now.
I'm
Yeah.
going to be gone for the first 10 days of September.
Okay,
We still have a week and a
the next
half.
meeting would be the 17th of September. So we'd be back if we had a
You'll be
meeting.
going to the 14th then,
No, I'll be gone through the 11th,
to the 11th, okay.
first 10 days of September.
So
First 10 days, okay.
if we put a deadline, let's say of, let's see, because I would need maybe a few days. I need the packet finalized by the 12th. So we could say like, okay, well,
We've got 11 days left this month.
so if we said like September, I don't know, September 1st or something, like, is that enough time? And if you don't get
I'll do my best.
dig all the way through it, that's fine, but at least then we'll have the sections I can put
We
them
can send
in.
it to Shannon too.
And I can send it to Shannon and give her a little homework. Say, here's the ones we've started with, here's the full list. Anything you want to add, I'll then have, a week and a half or so to pull the language from different places and put proposed sort of language in. And then our next session, maybe it's just a matter of finalizing all those things, adding it in, and then taking it to the next step, which would be adoption.
So at the next meeting, are we talking about adopting it, voting to adopt it, or,
No, I think you would be going through it.
and
And
then
then the
October?
meeting after that would be, in other words, we'd be trying to get to all the changes at the next meeting. And then staff makes a clean document.
And so we would adopt it in October.
Right, and then we can get it to council in October, and then it'd be adopted, or even if it wasn't adopted till November, it's still before the end of the year, certainly.
One other thing is if you'd be able to, all those shoulds that got changed to shall, if there's some way of highlighting
Oh, sure.
those changes that were made, because I imagine council want to see all the changes.
Probably true.
Excuse me. Actually, you know what? It probably isn't a can of worms. Council generally
Yeah.
is pretty
because-
good about seeing what is the best path.
Yeah, and, so yeah, I can obviously, I have like a red line version that I then cleaned, which I probably should not have, but,
Well, even if you just took your red line version and everything that was changed was highlighted,
Yeah.
like just
Yeah,
like
just
you
so,
did.
just so we know what all the
Yes,
changes
just
are.
so you know what changed.
right, yeah, so I,
That's not true. Maybe some of our folks might not like the fact that we went from should to shall on some of these.
No, that's
but
true, they may not.
well,
I will
so,
argue viciously.
so I probably what I need to do is I have my clean version and then go back to the original and just remake all the changes. in the
I'm
original,
sorry.
Which is fine, should to shall is like, just copy.
That's a global change.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just change all the shoulds to shall, pretty easy, and that'll show up in track changes, and then anywhere else where I move things around, I just move them around again, and then adding in all the new ones, it would be good to show all the new additions, so.
There's always a good chance someone's gonna ask you to do that anyway, so might as well do it
Right.
now.
Yeah, I shouldn't have made anything clean anyway, actually. I need to see it clean in order to,
I hate looking at red line stuff.
yeah, so anyway.
Red line is not, red line is challenging, but just highlighting would be okay.
But yeah, it might only be like, probably done more than an
It's
hour
another
or
way
so.
of doing it, is you do everything in yellow, you highlight it in yellow as to anything that's changed, as opposed to red line.
So then it
Red
would,
line makes my eyeballs hurt.
so then maybe.
That will take you longer, but that's another way of doing it.
So rather than have it say, like, could we replace the should with a shall? You think then just highlighting shall to show that that was a change, or would you want to see what it was before?
I myself prefer red lines,
Yeah.
strike out and
Because then
different
you know
text,
it was-
but that's because I've been doing that for 50 years.
Right,
What do we think is going to be easier for people to read?
Who's our audience?
Council?
Or the
Well-
ultimate audience is council, but for the interim, it's us.
I'll just redline it, it'll be,
Take your time.
and because like most of it will be should to shall, things like that, and where it's just, but where it's like, let's say, oh, well, this was an important section, so we moved it to the top rather than the.
Make your red line, and then when you do your red line, and you have the version ready for council, here's my highlighted copy. I have both versions ready. There you go. Because some people are not gonna care what we've said, and some people will.
Right, yeah, it's true. Okay, well, I think that's good.
One other area that I've mentioned before, and I can do this in my comments, is that we have 3 or 4 different sets of criteria. And I can do that in my comments and attempt
Section
to
2 and 3.
consolidate that. Well, no, that would make 5 if you count it that way. The other places, there's criteria in chapter 21. There's criteria because we reference the standards of the National Park Service. And there's one more. Oh, the other one, which was sort of the way I had organized that table, is there are the things called the aspects of integrity. That's actually what the Park Service looks at to see, is this a historic building or not? Those are the things that you actually are the most important things to protect. And whether or not that should be put into the criteria that we're protecting those specific things that are called the aspects of integrity.
I actually don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good idea because it kind of goes to what Shannon was saying about people need to understand why these are happening. Aspects of integrity says, okay, here's why it's happening, and these are the things that will protect it.
Yeah, the Park Service looks at that, and if you don't have the aspects, they're saying you're not gonna be in the National Register.
So does that need to be in the guidelines, or does that need to be linked to the guidelines?
Well, what I'm gonna attempt to do is just to see, can I consolidate all of it? I'll submit something in my comments, will say, this is an attempt to sort of put all those together because there's so much overlap between those four sets.
Okay.
And the main thing we want to do is make sure that we've covered them, and we make sure in particular that we're protecting the aspects, because like, you know, it's unlikely the Park Service is going to come out here and say, okay, this building is off the list. They don't have the staff to do that. But on the other hand, this is what we're supposed to be protecting. And we have an agreement through the CLG that says we will protect these things.
I don't think that's a bad idea. You know, I love the idea that we explain why. Now, people don't have to agree with it, and I know there are people that don't agree with it. You know,
Well, and it helps us in decision making because are we eliminating one of the aspects? That would be something we shouldn't do.
Yeah, I had that on the list on something that I needed to do, but have not gotten to, so.
I'll go ahead and make it, I'll do it in my comments that I send.
Okay, I'll send the table out to everyone tomorrow, and then if anyone needs anything else.
Send it in. Yeah.
Sure.
It's an Excel spreadsheet, so it should be convertible.
And can you send me this document also in PDF? One that you printed for me?
Yeah,
The guideline,
oh yeah, the one with updates or the original?
updates.
anything else?
Did we answer all four of your questions? I'm just turning to that.
I'm feeling
Sample language.
I'm feeling pretty good about everything.
Yeah, I think we did cover all four questions. Requests for direction.
I think the big things, you know, I'll be ongoing with the website. That'll be dynamic. We'll keep working on new language, and I'll get the red lines.
There was one more point for discussion I was gonna bring up. Is right now the guidelines that we have are basically oriented to commercial buildings. And we have two other types of buildings that have been designated. We have several houses and we have institutional buildings. And we may need at some point to think about, we may need some standards or guidelines that deal with the fact these are other types of buildings that our guidelines weren't really thinking about.
That's true. I'm just thinking through the guidelines in my head. I think a fair amount of them are adaptable for residential.
Yeah, I was thinking about when you look at the how-to suggestions, those are all non-residential structures, in other words. And it may be if we, oh, by the way, did we ever get the grant to study a bunch of one of those areas? Did that ever get approved or did that ever get submitted?
Not know.
I don't know, that was a I think that was a Jonathan grant.
I'm guessing if you haven't heard anything, then maybe nothing's ever happened. Okay, so that doesn't matter. So it's not imminent that we're gonna look at designating a lot more houses.
Oh, well, this was one of the things that was on my agenda from last year, and getting each sites and facilities up and going was also part of my agenda. The next big thing on my agenda is how do we designate local historic districts throughout town? Like, you know, the Boulder, Dylan and I were talking about this thing, Boulder has 2 commercial districts and 9 residential. And one of them, I went to a talk about it, it's 5 houses, because it was a specific architect in a specific period of that architect's work. Yeah, 5 houses. But it's actually really cool. I'm like, okay, how can we adapt that for here?
Well, there's several ways of going about it. One is they could be local designations without going for the National Register at this time.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to go for the National Register. What started this is actually 2 years
But
old.
that the city council can approve new districts, and it's a matter of the politics of,
Denver has done districts that, like, our period of significance is only 40 years, but Denver has done districts that are like 80 years, which allows for greater flexibility in windows, replacing windows or fencing, replacing fences.
it actually shouldn't, but yeah, they've done that.
But I think when you look at like the East End, what the East End would consider historic, like what we consider historic on the East End is different than what we would consider down here on Fourth and Fifth
Right.
Avenue.
And it would have a different period. You
Yeah.
wouldn't have one period, you wouldn't have one long period for.
No. I actually envision at least three local historic districts. We could do more, that focus on just that piece of the neighborhood. But you're right, I'm worried about the politics. I talk it up all the time. No one's tried to stab me in the eyeball or anything, for wanting to put more regulations, but
One of it doesn't have to be regulations.
But that's what people
Yeah,
think.
But at the outset, it can be, it's recognizing it, but we're not putting any regulations on it. And then you could deal with regulations at a further step if people say, we'd like to have some protection.
Well, and how do you access tax credits? How do you access, because that was the other thing that I looked at was if people are if we want people to protect the houses that are not in the downtown area, there's some fabulous houses. It's expensive.
The one thing they would get as a credit would be the one thing of benefit they would be able to get would be the building code stuff. Because the stuff from the building code, for example, that it has more flexibility, it only has to be National Register eligible. It doesn't have to be on the National Register.
Well, the other thing that we've talked about this a little bit in city council, like retreats, is we did a facade improvement program for the downtown. How could we do a facade improvement for our residential?
There's places that have done that. Castle Rock has one for their commercial area. I'm sure there's quite a few places that have done I think maybe Louisville or Lafayette might have done that.
Because I, like, having done a renovation in the last 5 years, I took out $100,000 loan and I spent every penny of it, and I didn't do like a full house reno. I had very specific things that I did.
Well, from having worked for Georgetown, I've always thought the houses immediately to the north of the commercial area, historic commercial area, what they need is just set aside a big lump of money to paint and weatherize those houses.
Oh, because
They're all historically intact, but they're deteriorating.
like the mansard roof house. Oh, God, that house is gorgeous.
And so I think the same thing would be true here, is if there was a grant or revolving loan, grant would obviously be the one that people would be most. I've worked in places where the grant is like as small as $200. It's sort of an incentive to do some fix-up work.
But we could use that. The way that we've done it here in the past has been facade improvement.
And the other thing is that could be a grant application to the state. The Burns, I don't think that the cities are participating in the Burns grant from the state. What it is, it's the one grant that basically fits us, because most of the grant money out of the Park Service, which has big money, is oriented towards underrepresented communities, which would include women too.
But we are underrepresented in that we're rural. We're
Yeah, but that rural's not something they're doing.
Okay.
But they are doing, like I said, they're doing underrepresented communities. There's a lot of money for that. The one though that doesn't have that requirement is the Burns grant. And what that is, there's a master grant holder who then distributes the money to sub-grantees.
So like the city could be the master grant holder.
It could be, or the county could be, and we in Georgetown are sub-grantees, and Empire are sub-grantees. But no, the city could be, but you have to have sub-grantees. You can't just be It can't just be all years, it's gotta have
Oh,
some.
no, like,
rotation.
if we had that grant, that would be a grant for, how do we help the citizens? It's not the city money, it's like, that all goes, like, that goes to my thought process of how do we help people upgrade or keep their houses in good repair?
Mhm.
You can't get a loan right now, you can't get money to
Well,
fix
that,
things.
that would be a state grant rather than than a national grant to do something
The
like that.
brute,
Roots is the one where you have the master and then you have all of the subordinate ones.
I
I-
think that's great to look
I
at,
don't know if they would let one city
have it.
basically say, yes, we're doing it all within our city boundaries. However, that would seem reasonable as a grant application to the state of Colorado.
But yeah, I would love to, because I feel like we're almost done with our design guidelines. We've got sites and facilities, we're approving, did you put your application in for it?
What?
Sites and facilities?
No, I can, I guess.
I would love it if you did.
Okay. The other thing, going back to the designation, again, it could be the type of thing, again, it's a local designation. It could be done initially with no strings attached. And then you see how well that goes. And the other thing along those lines is like the survey that didn't get done, is you could have volunteer surveys. The original Telluride survey, they had a consultant who supervised a lot of volunteers. It doesn't even have to be a consultant. But in other words, in terms of a work program, that's something that could be done by volunteers as long as there's supervision.
I would like, let's think on that, like, that doesn't have to happen now, but because designation of local districts with the different periods of significance is one of my, like, it's on my agenda. And how do we help people get money to keep their houses up is also part of that.
And I think the best option there is a state grant.
Okay, but I would like to, like, that would be like moving into 2025 for what we would like to look at is not just looking at COA stuff, but
That'd be a very good priority because that would make public feel better. Because
they
here's,
hate us right now.
here's something that we're giving without strings attached to it. In other words, if you follow these guidelines, you can get this amount of money.
Okay, well, that would be, I would love that because that, we have hit our goals that I've had over the last couple of years for what I wanted to see HPRC work on. You know, and with design guidelines being done at the end of the year, now we need a new goal. I would love that. But yes,
So-
you need to apply.
So the next cycle is probably the application for March. We're too late for
September.
September, so it'd be March.
So then we would need to pick out a specific area that we designate, because that takes a little process too. It has to go through us.
Oh, for the grant,
Well, like if we're doing a locally designated historic area, it goes through us, it goes through the council, and then we can apply for the grant.
okay.
Or, I mean, do I have that process wrong?
No, I'm just thinking, is it the thing that you want to get to? Are we looking at doing identifying the historic properties that would look to qualify? You know, we've had a consultant sort of at a very
High level.
high level that said, these ones look like they will be.
So is
these
that the
ones-
grant, is there a grant that we could?
Yes.
Okay,
There's a
let's do
specific,
that then.
there's a specific type of grant for doing that type of thing.
Okay, and that's the March grant you're talking about.
Either that or the other one, but you need to have the properties designated to, you want to get money to fix them up.
Yeah, no, we can't do that, but if we could get money to do a study and figure out our properties, hopefully we could have local designation areas done by the end of next year. Because things move slowly.
Yeah, and that's what's called a planning grant. It's a specific category.
Okay, so that's a 2025. Now you have a heads up. But we have hit, like, I'm really proud of us because we have hit, I had certain goals that I wanted to see happen and we have done them. We're almost done with design guidelines because they needed it. You know, I'm very proud of the work that we've done.
Hazel says she's ready to go home.
I never. Do we have anything else?
I think so.
Then I can call our work session to an end. Thank you so, thank you. I know this was long.
I know better when you say it's gonna be a short one.
Well, I thought it was gonna be a short one. I didn't think this was gonna take longer, but
So if we ended